Hey, this is Warren Wolf, and I'm here to celebrate Black Music Month with the Mack Avenue Music Group. I like to talk about a few particular artists who have influenced me big time in my music career. I like to start with the 1980s, at least for me. I'm going to start with the wonderful songstress from Detroit, Michigan. This is Miss Anita Baker. Um, when I was a youngster, my dad he used to play her hit record Rapture all the time. And it's not often that you're going to find a record that has like every song was a hit from beginning to end. What's it called? 365 Days of the Year, Sweet Love, Rapture, You Bringing Me Joy. So many records on that album were just happening. And just as a youngster, I used to listen to this record all the time. I used to try to play some of those songs on the piano. And to be honest, a lot of those songs are kind of jazz related, but they just happen to be hits. I really enjoy hearing her sing, hearing her background vocals, hearing the lush complex, the lush harmonies of her music, and last but not least, the music just grooved. You know, everybody really loved that record. It was again, it's a hit. I still play it today in 2021, and I'm sure I'll be playing it in 2031 and 2041. It's just such an awesome record. Yeah, my dad had a band, and they used to play like all of these hits around Baltimore or these places around Baltimore, D.C. And their band was more R&B related. So they would play a lot of music like Yellow Jackets and Spiral Gyra, but also one of those the artists they would play a lot was Anita Baker. So this is from what I remember, 1984, 85, somewhere around there. So that record was it was just being played all the time, mainly because of my dad. And then when I finally, got of age, when I learned how to control the record player, I started to just go down and just, play the record all by myself and just sit down and just listen to her sing, and just listen to the melodies, listen to everything that was going on. So just an awesome record. And then just following up with other records, I became a big fan of hers. I remember she came out with this another record called Body and Soul, which is another one of my favorite tracks. She on that same record, I think it was Body and Soul, The Look of Love, another tune called I Apologize. Yeah, they were just some of my favorite records with Anita Baker. So she's always been like one of my favorites and artists that I really not look forward to working to, but it was an artist that I really wanted to work with at some point in life. So growing up, I was born in 1979. Again, I was a fan of 80s music, but then because I have two older sisters, and my older sisters were not really interested in jazz like how I was. I grew up listening to a lot of the music that my sisters would listen to. They were big fans of R&B and hip hop. My sisters used to love New Edition, um, Run DMC, all those groups from early Def Jam in the 80s. So in the 90s, once particularly around 1993 to 1997, I became so involved in hip hop. And even though I was still listening to jazz, I became a big fan of the whole East Coast West Coast battle between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records. And in particular, there was one artist who I still listen to today in 2021. It's really not so much for the lyrics; it's more or less for the music. It's the late great Tupac Shakur. He's one of my favorite rappers. Actually, if this bass right here was not in the way, that's actually a picture of Tupac right there, just to show how much I really respect his artistry. Um, a lot of his music, at least back then, I recall we could look at the albums and look at the credits and things like that. So usually on a lot of those records, I could always tell like what was sampled from what. So I was getting an early introduction to many different artists, particularly Roger Troutman, George Clinton, and P Funk. Like I said, Roger Troutman and Zapp. One great song that I actually listened to, I was just happened to be working out one day. Tupac has a song that he wrote for his mother on one of his records called "Me Against the World," and that album is called the song is called "Dear Mama." And when I was listening to the song, it has some really cool chords to it, that any jazz musician could play over. Um, but then I just happened to be working out, and I was listening to I think a Roger Troutman greatest hits, and I don't remember the name of the song that Roger has, but Tupac clearly, or whoever was producing the record, clearly took those chords from that Roger Troutman song and placed it onto "Dear Mama." And that could explain the future collaborations, such as Tupac's big hit "California Love," which had again Roger Troutman singing the hook, "California knows how to party." So again, just getting an early introduction to soul, hip hop music. Back when we could look at liner notes and things like that. Again, something about being influenced. I like, again, take away the lyrics. I love
Hmm.
that music and the sound that we're hearing, like from that stuff that I used to listen to in the '90s that I still listen to now. I try to take a lot of those factors in music and put them into my own music. So again, what you're talking about, yes, it is a vocoder, but this particular version is called a Talkbox. So a lot of people have all. Is it okay to explain this? Well, no. Some people know, some people don't know how this works. This is actually a regular plastic tube. Um, how it works, at least on this, how I'm doing it at home, the keyboard is hooked to the actual box. I cannot pull that up. It's on the floor. It's too many wires down there. But it's hooked to the box. You flip the box on. So once you pick a sound, the sound that Roger Troutman and there's another guy he calls him online. He did the intro for Bruno Mars. Oh, the intro tonight. I just want to take you out. The guy who did
Yeah.
the intro for that's a Talkbox. His name is Mr. Talkbox. He's a very popular dude. You can find him on Instagram. But how that works again, the keyboard sound that most of these artists use it's called a saw, SAW, a basic saw. So that sound is pumped um, through the tube. When you're now, you also have to be a good keyboard player. So what happens is, I mean, I'm not going to demonstrate it now because my stuff is not on. The tube goes into your mouth. Again, the keyboard sound, that saw sounds coming out of the tube. So the tube goes in not like the front of your mouth, but in the side. Like you can pretty much like rest it in between your teeth and your cheek, whichever side you prefer. The sound is now all in your mouth. Now, what happens there? You're not talking anymore. You're just kind of like saying the words, but there's no actual voice coming out. It's kind of like uh, if I had to explain it to like a little kid or somebody, it's like if somebody reached down in your soul and just yanked your voice away, but you're still trying to talk. So now the sound is taking over for the words, and that's how we project that sound from the talk box. So this is a tube. Um, Again, many artists have influenced me from using that, from Roger Troutman, Mr. Talkbox. Herbie Hancock has done it with a very popular tune that a lot of jazz musicians like to play nowadays called Butterfly. Stevie Wonder has also used the Talkbox a lot, and again, that's another huge influence for me right there. So all of the stuff is kind of running like in a line formation. It's like again from Anita Baker to, and I'm skipping over many artists, but Anita Baker to Tupac, and then going way back to Roger Troutman and Zapp, um, to Herbie Hancock to Stevie Wonder to shoot, I'm trying to just think of some other folks who have greatly influenced me. Kelly Price, and but that's on the soul side. I would take all of those styles of music and put them into my own style of jazz. So, for instance, I have a recording. Um, I forget the name of my own records. Reincarnation. There's a tune on there called "In the Heat of the Night." that tune was heavily influenced by D'Angelo. D'Angelo is another one of my favorite artists ever. D'Angelo had a tune on his record called Voodoo titled "How Does It Feel." It has the same slow 3/4, sexy backbeat, and I wanted to have that same feel on my tune that D'Angelo had on this tune. So from D'Angelo, artists like him made me want to check out Prince. My music history has always started in the present and then to the past. So from D'Angelo to Prince, from Tupac, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg to George Clinton and Roger Troutman and so forth. and if I had to really do it in jazz, from Christian McBride to Ray Brown, from Roy Hargrove to Miles Davis, to from another big mentor of mine, Antonio Hart, to Charlie Parker. When I read Herbie Hancock's autobiography, one of the things that he talked about in his book was how close Stevie Wonder and himself, how close they were, and how they would always compete on who had the newest this, who had the newest that, as far as keyboards go. I forget which record cover it was, but I think Herbie, on the backside of one of his records, he had a picture with like 9 different keyboards. But him and Stevie always worked really well together. Again, now the light bulb's going off. I'm thinking about many things. Stevie Wonder's tune, is it called As? A-S? Until the day da do do be da do do do. I forget the name of that one. I think it's As. The keyboard solo on that song. A lot of people will recognize this song from that movie. At least the people who really don't follow Stevie Wonder, they would probably recognize this song from. There's a dance scene in that movie, The Best Man, with Nia Long and Taye Diggs when they were looking back at their college years. But the keyboard solo in there was Herbie Hancock. So those two, they work together pretty often. And again, I can only imagine, like, when the Talkbox came out, both of those guys was like, wait, what's this? So they probably bought like 5 each or something like that. Again, from pianos to the Fender Rhodes to the Wurlitzers to the synthesizers to the Mini Moogs, those two guys had it all. And they influenced not only me, but just thousands of keyboard players and musicians just in general. Diane Reeves, another great artist, she actually did a pop arrangement, I think in the maybe late 80s, early 90s. I think that was arranged by the late great George Duke. But this song is actually composed by Herbie Hancock, but Stevie Wonder wrote the lyrics. It's a beautiful tune. Again, I love playing the song in my own band, so a lot of people, they really like it. I think the first time I heard the tune it actually was not by Diane Reeves. I was listening to a earlier Christian McBride record, I think from one of his records when he was on Verve many years ago, and he did a ballad version of the song, and he played arco on the upright bass, and it sounded wonderful. And I think Stanley Clarke recorded. He's another great artist. I know Stanley has done many films and things like that. So many artists have really come my way and influenced me. One thing about me as a educator and still as a student, and I'm still a student even though I have a lot of acclaim in this business, I still like to learn from a lot of different people. So all of these artists, these Black artists, Black musicians, I like to pull little things from everybody and try to use them in my own music in many different ways. Again, I said Stanley Clarke. I look at Terrence Blanchard. Not only just Terrence Blanchard as a jazz musician, but Terrence Blanchard as a movie composer. All of those wonderful movies that I used to listen or watch when I was a kid. Number one mainly was Mo Better Blues, between Terrence Blanchard and Bill Lee, who is Spike Lee's dad. Listening to a lot of those wonderful arrangements, the string arrangements, to the Malcolm X suite. That's another great one, and many different. I'm trying to think some of those. Just about any Spike Lee movie that came out back then. What do you call it, the Spike Lee joint? She's Gotta Have It. Crooklyn, Do the Right Thing. Terrence wrote all of that music, I think, for the most part. So just all classic, you know, ideas that have influenced me in some way.